Hi everyone, welcome to episode 30 of The Comic Source. I'm your host Jace. This is another Wednesday Quick Hits episode, but before I get into the books I'm going to cover, I just want to mention that The Comic Source has started a new podcast. It's called the Top Cow Chronology Project. My co-host Manny and I go through the Top Cow universe. We're going to go chronologically, talking about each book starting way back in ancient Egypt up to present day. Each episode's about 20 minutes long. We read the book and we talk about it immediately. So you can find that on iTunes. Just do a search for Top Cow Chronology. Or you can go to our new website, thecomicsourceblog.com. All the podcast episodes are available there. You can watch these videos there. We also have a sketch gallery. There's convention coverage. Manny has a blog. So there's a lot of content on the site. Go and check it out. Let us know what you think. Also, coming up on Saturday, February 28th and Sunday, March 1st, Manny and I are going to be attending the Long Beach Comic Expo in Long Beach, California. It's kind of a smaller show, a lot of cosplay. They have a ton of great guests. Art Adams, Todd Knock, Chris Claremont, Brian Bucoletto, Bernard Chang, Jerry Conway, Terry Dodson, Matt Hawkins, Stan Sakai, Brian Wood, and a ton more really great comic creators going to be there. So if you live somewhere close, somewhere in California, it's definitely a show I recommend attending. That's the Long Beach Comic Expo, February 28th and March 1st. Now on to the first book I'm going to talk about. It's Justice League 39, written by Jeff Johns. The art is handled by Jason Fabuk, and the colors are by Brad Anderson. This is the end of the Amazovirus storyline that's been going on for 5 issues in Justice League. I kind of felt like it should have gone 1 or 2 more issues. It seemed that Jeff Johns was crafting this huge, epic, sprawling storyline, and after the way last issue ended, I expected it to go at least 2, if not 3 more issues, but he kind of wrapped everything up in this 1 issue. And he did a reasonably good job of explaining everything that was going on. The story didn't feel like it was lacking necessarily. However, one thing about the Justice League book ever since it started, it's tended to have artists that use a lot of big panels and big splash pages. And so you lose a little bit of the story just because with these giant pages there's not as much room to have more panels and tell more story. So it's not necessarily a criticism because the book is certainly great to look at, but it does mean that maybe it takes a little longer, a few more issues to tell the story than might otherwise be necessary if they were using smaller panels. So just to talk a little bit about the story, there's a virus that Lex Luthor had initially made hoping to take Superman's powers away. It didn't work, but he saved the virus and he had it stored in his secret lab. There's an accident, the virus is let loose, there's a worldwide epidemic, people are dying. So it kind of gave the rest of the Justice Leaguers vindication. They felt that Luthor hadn't reformed, he shouldn't have been a part of the League. But at the end of the day, Superman, Lex Luthor, and Captain Cold pretty much are responsible for ending the virus. So once again, Luthor has the public opinion on his side and has the backing of the president. So it doesn't look like he's going to be leaving the Justice League anytime soon. It's an interesting dynamic for the team. With the exception of Captain Cold, pretty much everybody else on the Justice League wants Luthor gone. They're just looking for an excuse. So overall, the story was enjoyable, and as I said, this issue is certainly beautiful to look at, so pick it up. The next book I'm going to talk about is She-Hulk number 12. It's the last issue in the series. It's written by Charles Soule, the art is by Javier Peludo, and the colors are by Munsta Vicente. So this has been a really fun series all along, and issue 12 is no different. What I really enjoy about the She-Hulk series, Charles Soule, who some of you may not know is a lawyer in real life, brings that legal expertise to the book. So it shows Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, use her brain much more than her brawn. I really enjoyed it. I've always been a big fan of legal dramas on TV, also a big fan of John Grisham books, so this fits right in there. So if you're a fan of legal stories, legal maneuvering, I certainly recommend this book. I'm not a huge fan of the art. It's a little more on the cartoony style. It wouldn't have been my first choice, but the story by Charles Soule is compelling enough that it didn't bother me too much. What I'd really like to see is someday Charles Soule return to She-Hulk with a different artist, someone who's a little more photorealistic or traditional comic art. And I think there can be an audience for a book with She-Hulk as the star, where she doesn't battle very many supervillains, at least not out in the real world, but maybe in the courtroom. I wasn't sure how well it would translate doing a legal story in the comic book medium, but I feel it worked really well, and like I said, I really hope Charles Soule returns to the character someday. The next book I'm going to talk about is Silk number 1. Now this book's been getting a lot of hype. Silk is a female character who was bitten by the exact same radioactive spider that gave Peter Parker his powers. So right from the start, when I heard about her as a character, I was very skeptical. I didn't really like the whole idea of this retcon with her being bit by the same spider as Peter Parker, so Apparently what happened was she's bit by the spider, she gained some powers, but there was some shadowy organization that was trying to get a hold of her. So in order to save her family and everyone else, she locked herself in a bunker for 10 years. And I suppose because she's been locked in a bunker for 10 years, that she didn't really mature much. So by that I mean, even though she's about the same age as Peter Parker, whenever they interact, she feels so much younger. She feels like she's 16, maybe even 14. It really didn't work for me. The art was kind of cartoony. Didn't care for it. I thought the storytelling from panel to panel also wasn't particularly good. So it's not a book I'm going to be following. I know, like as I said, Silk's been getting a lot of hype, so I'm sure that the book will sell well. But for me, it just wasn't my thing, and I feel there's a lot of room for improvement in this book. As I said, the biggest thing for me was just Silk as a character seeming so childlike, and it just didn't make sense to me. You know, here she is, this 28, 30-year-old woman, you know, whatever she is, and she acts like she's 12. It just, I didn't care for it. And I should mention that Silk #1 was written by Robbie Thompson. The art was handled by Stacy Lee, and Ian Herring did the colors. Now the next book I'm going to talk about is Lazarus #15 from Image Comics. It's written by Greg Rucka, and the art is handled by Michael Lark with an assist from Tyler Boss. And the colors are done by Santi Arcus. For those of you not familiar with Lazarus, I'll give you a quick rundown. In the future, there aren't really countries anymore. What there are territories, and these territories are run by these giant corporations, which in turn are controlled by these families. So the main character of the book is Forever Carlyle. She's the Lazarus for the Carlyle family. And a Lazarus is kind of a warrior, head of security for a family. They're genetically modified, sometimes cybernetically modified, to be these incredible warriors. And they basically fight for their family's best interest. So what's been going on in the latest arc of Lazarus is two families that are enemies have agreed to meet on neutral territory to try to work out some of their differences. One family has kidnapped a member of the other family, and they're trying to extract genetic secrets from that person. So the confrontation comes to a head in this issue with champions from both families fighting each other, kind of a trial by combat. There's not a lot of dialogue during this epic battle, but it's not needed. Michael Lark does such an amazing job rendering these panels. Each panel is beautifully done. You really feel like this is an epic life and death struggle between these two opponents. And the issue ends on a cliffhanger, as a lot of these Lazarus issues do. So if you're not reading Lazarus, I recommend it. Just pick up the latest issue, check it out. I have a feeling that once you read one issue, you'll be hooked just like I was. Another thing I should mention is that Greg Rucka puts text pieces in the back of the book to kind of give a history of the world and explain how it came to pass that these families are now in control. So Rucka and Lark are crafting this very elaborate, very detailed post-apocalyptic world, and it's an incredible book. Okay, the next book I want to discuss is Ivar Time Walker from Valiant. This is issue 2. It's written by Fred Van Lente, and the art is by Clayton Henry and Robert Gill, and the beautiful colors are handled by Brian Raybear. So Ivar, as some of you may or may not know, is the brother of the Eternal Warrior Gilad and Armstrong from the Archer and Armstrong book. Much like his brothers, he's immortal, and he has the ability to travel through time. Now that ability isn't necessarily inherent to him. He has built this time compass that lets him know when these little one-way mini wormholes are going to open up. Time arcs he calls them, and he can step through these holes and he enters another time period. So the first issue starts out and he's rescuing a physicist right before she's about to invent time travel, and the second issue picks up with him trying to explain to her how it's not really possible to go back and change history, and he's kind of showing her the ropes and explaining to her why he does the things he does. So Fred Van Lente did a great job on the Archer and Armstrong book of making it fun and funny and kind of going back with some revisionist history type things, adding in these little conspiracy theories that weren't really that far-fetched. Well, it seems like Ivar is going to be the same type of book. He does great going back, visiting different periods of history, and adding in these little things that make you think like, maybe that really could have happened. Now, as opposed to the Archer and Armstrong book, I don't feel that Ivar is going to have as much comedy as Archer and Armstrong, but instead it's going to be a lot more action-based, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. The first 2 issues have been great. One thing I will mention about Ivar as a character, he mentions in this book that he can't really be in any one time period more than about 90 minutes at a time, because he steps through these arcs, he emerges in a time period, and he has to leave when the next arc opens up. Otherwise, he'll be stuck in that time period forever. So when you think about it, that makes for a very lonely life. I feel like that's part of the reason he went and rescued this physicist, so now he has someone to travel with him. So it'll be interesting to see if Van Lente explores that about Ivar at all. Okay, the last book I'm going to talk about is Wonder Woman 39. That book is my book of the week. It's written by Meredith Finch. The pencils are by David Finch. Inks by Jonathan Glapion, and colors by Sonia Obach. Now, a lot of people were disappointed when Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang left Wonder Woman. I kind of kept an open mind. I wanted to see what the Finches would do with it. And what Azzarello and Chiang did is they really brought an epic, godlike feel to Wonder Woman, more so than anyone had ever done in the past, really playing up that Greek god connection, and it kind of separated Wonder Woman from the rest of the comics. Even though she was a member of the Justice League, Wonder Woman as a book felt like it was off in its own little corner of the universe. The amazing thing about what Meredith Finch has been able to do so far is she's kind of kept that godlike feel of Wonder Woman being part of this legendary and mythic story, but she's managed to feel like it belongs more in the DC universe proper. The last few issues we've seen appearances by Superman and Batman and Aquaman as Justice League teammates, and it's given more of a superheroic feel to the book that I really enjoy. Also, Meredith Finch is really putting Wonder Woman through the ringer. Wonder Woman is now the god of war, having taken over that title from Ares. Her mother, Hippolyta, has died, so she has risen to the rank of Queen of the Amazons. Meanwhile, she's also still a member of the Justice League. So she's got a lot of balls in the air, a lot of things going on, and it's causing a rift between her and her Amazonian sisters on Paradise Island. They want a ruler whose priority is going to be them. So what happened last issue was we saw through the sacrifice of an infant child and using some of the remains of Hippolyta that one of the Amazons crafted a new queen. And what emerged was the New 52 version of Donna Troy. So we've seen a lot of people clamoring for the return of Donna Troy in the New 52. And we see that she has returned, and apparently she's going to be Queen of the Amazons. Well, Diana is not about to let that happen, and on the last page of this issue, we see that they're about to battle. So as I said, what I love about what Meredith Finch has brought to the book is incorporating more of a superheroic feel in with all the gods and the legends and the myths of what Azzarello and Chiang brought to the book, and incorporating Wonder Woman more into the DC universe proper. I feel like this is some of the best Wonder Woman that I've ever read, and having David Finch on pencils certainly helps that out. His pencils are gorgeous, and the colors by Sonia Obach do a good job of making it look dark and foreboding. So it's a beautiful book to look at. It's a really fun book to read. I can't wait to see what happens next. So I know there was some talk early on. People were worried that Meredith Finch and David Finch weren't going to give Wonder Woman her due. They had nothing to worry about. I feel like Meredith Finch is doing a great job putting all these trials and tribulations in the way of Wonder Woman, so we can see just how strong she is as she overcomes them. Okay, there's a few more books that came out that I want to mention real fast. Batman Superman 19, written by Greg Pak, with art by Adrian Syaf. This introduces a new character being referred to as Superman's Joker, so this could end up being a really significant issue if that villain does indeed turn out to be as significant to Superman as the Joker is to Batman. Also, Ninth Generation, issue 2, written by Matt Hawkins with art by Stefan Sejic, came out. This continues the story of the future of the Top Cow universe, where we see the artifacts, the Witchblade, the Darkness in the far-flung future. MPH, which has been a limited series by Mark Miller, and the arts by Duncan Fegredo. It's a story of the small-time hoods who gain super speed powers through the use of pharmaceuticals. Moon Knight number 12 also wraps up a story. It finishes off Brian Wood and Greg Smallwood's run on Moon Knight, which has been very enjoyable. Miles Morales, number 10, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by David Marquez, continues the secret history of Miles' father. Letter 44, issue 14, written by Charles Soule and art by guest artist Drew Moss, is a flashback issue. It tells the story of how Overholt and Willett join the expedition. And finally, the Valiant 3 from Valiant Comics, written by Matt Kent and Jeff Lemire with art by Paulo Rivera, has a massive battle. Pretty much every hero in the Valiant universe fighting against the immortal enemy. Meanwhile, Bloodshot and Kay McHenry get to know each other better. So thanks for joining me on this episode, everybody. Hope to see some of you at the upcoming Long Beach Comic Con, and I'll see you next time.